I observed John walking into the bar and greeted him with a grin. Despite the early hour and the almost empty bar, I hoped John would join me. It had been a while since we hung out, as John was busy with something in his life and couldn't make time. Worried, I tried calling and emailing, but I couldn't reach John. I even attempted to visit John's home and office, but he was never there. I hoped his issues were resolved, but the anger on his face indicated otherwise. I stood up to shake hands but was suddenly knocked to the ground by a strong punch from John to the jaw. My head hit a nearby table as I fell. I muttered a shocked exclamation and spat out a bloody tooth. John stood over me, ready to hit again. He accused me, saying I knew and that my wife and I were laughing at him, bet that we enjoyed how trusting he was. My swollen jaw and the likely concussion made it hard for me to concentrate. I couldn't make sense of John's words. The only word I could say was, "What?" He continued to strike my ribs and legs. John shouted about my wife and me helping Amanda cheat. Bar patrons intervened, grabbing John and pulling him back. I, stunned and puzzled, looked on. The bartender called the police, and luckily, a patrol car was nearby. The ambulance took longer to arrive. While John was detained, I, helped by strangers, was assessed and placed on a gurney for transport to the emergency room. I lost consciousness before the ambulance even left, drowned out by the siren. To me, it felt like a short, bad dream. When I woke up, I realized I was in a hospital. It wasn't a nightmare. It was real. As I regained consciousness, Emily, my wife, entered with tears. She expressed her apologies and explained that she had left briefly to call my parents. I sat up a little and tried to gather my thoughts when Emily sat down and took my hand. Sleep and medication reduced the swelling, making my words more understandable. I recounted how I didn't know what happened, how I'd never seen him like this before. He said something about Amanda cheating and us causing it. His words made no sense. Emily's tears continued to fall as I spoke. Maybe I heard wrong, but he seemed to think we were making these trips so Amanda could cheat on him. This is crazy. Why would he think of something so crazy? I fell silent, looking at Emily. Lowering her head, she whispered an apology. I didn't understand why she was apologizing. He hit me, thinking we were helping her cheat. It sounded stupid. Why would he think we'd do something so bad? What kind of terrible people could do this to someone they care about? I looked at Emily as she raised her head. Something was off in her behavior. Maybe I was out of my mind, but her actions were suspicious since she was usually vocal about her opinions, especially about relationships with close friends. She might have been shocked because it wasn't what she expected. As I was about to ask her what was going on, the doctor came in and said my jaw was bruised, not broken. If I didn't have a headache, I could leave with Emily tonight. My head hurt, but something was clearly wrong with Emily, so I lied to the doctor that I felt fine to leave. Time passed. Nurses worked diligently with documents, denying me the chance to ask Emily. They were silent on the drive home. As Emily drove, we didn't even turn on music. We were silent the whole way. I needed answers, but by the time I got home, I was exhausted and just wanted to sleep. After changing clothes, I fell asleep. Emily curled up next to me, hugging tightly. After my shower, I joined Emily in the kitchen. Still in pain, but with a clearer head, I saw Emily deep in thought. Finally realizing I was there, she asked, "How are you feeling now?" "Okay, but I have a small Hitachi, and everything hurts. I just need a day of rest, and I'll be fine. I still can't figure out why John went so crazy." I took a sip and continued. "Did Amanda say anything to you? Have you talked to her since yesterday to find out what happened to him? I chatted with her a bit yesterday, and she was as shocked as I was about what he did to you." I looked at my wife while she spoke. Her response seemed measured, but there was something more. She appeared sad, which was unusual given her typically upbeat personality. She seemed reserved. I thought maybe the attack had shaken her more than I initially thought. I reached out, taking her hands in mine. "It's okay, honey. I'm fine. I've come to my senses." Soon, my shirt was wet from her tears. We hugged with the words, "I love you." Holding each other tightly, we both called into work and spent the entire day at home. Something besides physical pain bothered me. None of it made any sense. John's sudden attack, accusing us of helping Amanda cheat. Emily's sudden change to being timid. Her vague answers to basic questions. I wanted to press her about her conversation with Amanda, but Emily was on the verge of tears. I thought now was not the best time for a confrontation. Despite both staying home, we seemed distant. I sat in the backyard, watching the wind move the trees and grass, thinking I needed to understand why John attacked me. We had been friends for a long time, and I had never seen John lose his temper without a good reason. I thought about my wife's words and couldn't recall her ever saying that John's wife hadn't cheated and had only apologized for the attack on me. We needed to hear John's side of the story, and the best way was from John himself. Although there was a risk he might attack again, it seemed like the most direct way to understand what happened. I would then talk with Emily about our roles and what made John think we were betraying him. Emily informed me that she planned to briefly stop by work to pick up her laptop, as she would be home for the week and didn't want to fall behind. After she left, I decided to visit John. On the way, I tried to call him but couldn't reach him. I hoped John was out of prison, so I took a taxi to his house. If we were lucky, we could figure out what caused the mess and get back to normal. Upon reaching John's entrance, my stomach dropped when I saw Emily's car. Instead of ringing the doorbell, I walked to the back until I heard Emily talking to Amanda. Emily was no longer silent. She was furious. John had overheard her talking about setting up a date and having my back, a conversation not meant for him. This explained why he attacked me. According to Emily, John heard her say that she'd cover for her, and Tom and John would be busy, so she could go out without arousing John's suspicions. It seemed John took it to mean that I knew what was going on. Emily claimed she would have warned me if she knew. It wasn't until I was attacked that she realized John knew. He used his phone call to express his hatred towards her, choosing to rot in prison rather than live with her. Emily wanted to sympathize, but it was Amanda who left John. Emily's support for Amanda caused serious problems in her marriage, and things could worsen when I found out. She knew it was wrong, but hoped for a short fling. Instead, Emily's support led to the worst. Now she must deal with the consequences because of Amanda, who couldn't keep her actions in check. I expressed my concerns to Emily about my marriage being in serious trouble once I found out. She tried to reassure me, stating that I never cheated, and if needed, she would tell me that. I couldn't see her, but I could tell from her voice that she closed her eyes and rubbed her forehead as she spoke. Despite Emily's attempt to reassure me, I argued that I had lied to her, helped her scam my best friend, and as a result, he attacked me. I doubted that I could make her believe anything I told her, especially given her role in the situation. Emily insisted that I didn't do anything wrong and that I should know this. Frustrated, I told her that it didn't matter, and I had no idea how to fix the situation. If I didn't have a solution by the time I found out, my marriage would probably end just like hers did. I couldn't believe what a fool I was for helping her. I warned her that if I lost it, I would never talk to her again. Emily, trying to console me, mentioned that I had always been a loving wife, and Tom knew how much I loved him. I sarcastically replied that I was such a loving wife that my support of my promiscuous friend resulted in my husband getting his butt kicked by his best friend. She insisted that I didn't understand the situation, and that it would be years, at best, before I regained trust. I couldn't help but feel like a fool, wondering if Tom would ever trust me again. Having heard enough, I calmly returned to the street. My resilient nature allowed me to remain calm and focus on the task at hand. While waiting for a taxi, I realized I needed to start setting things right. But first, I needed to make sure I had all the facts. It was time to visit a friend. The passed-away sergeant and detectives appeared confused when I expressed my intention to pay bail, but after years of dealing with strange incidents in police work, they simply shrugged. They smirked at John's look when he saw me pull him out and laughed openly when I told John to just shut up until he was told to talk. Confused, John followed me and silently got into the car. After I gave the driver the address, we sat in silence until we arrived at the crime scene. The same bartender was on duty, nervous and obviously afraid of trouble. I quickly calmed him down, asking for a bottle of Glenmorangi's Signet, 2 glasses, and to be left alone. As we moved to a corner booth, I poured a generous portion into both glasses and pushed it towards John. We both drank and exchanged a sarcastic toast to the first drink. I looked at my friend. I explained to John that I didn't know about this setup. I just wanted to hang out and have a good time with him. They used our friendship against him, knowing I would never agree to this, so they started their lousy scheme without my knowledge. John looked at me carefully, able to tell when I was talking nonsense. It was clear from the expression on his face that now I was being honest. Once the initial anger had passed and he had cooled down in prison, John was able to think reasonably about what I told him. He expressed how she tore his heart out, and my wife Emily helped her. I shared my frustration, stating that I gave our marriage everything I had, only for it to be a waste of time because she chose to follow some strange man into bed. I refilled the drinks and simply listened to my friend while John expressed his frustration and anger about his marriage. When the whiskey and verbalization of the event eventually calmed John down, he apologized for the attack. John admitted he probably should have talked to me first, but he couldn't help himself. The revelation that his marriage and our friendship were over made him feel out of control. As much as it hurt that she cheated on him, the thought of me stabbing him in the back was even worse. Cheating was bad enough, but the idea of me laughing at him hurt even more. He sincerely apologized. I grinned, sipping my whiskey. "It's okay. I probably deserved it for having an affair with your sister sometime during the Christmas holidays." When I asked how he found out she was cheating, John shook his head. He explained that a few weeks ago, he felt something was wrong in his marriage, so he started to pull away. He eventually concluded that she must be cheating, preparing to hire a private investigator. While he was at work, his phone started showing video and audio from the Ring camera on the front porch. The motion sensor went off while Amanda was picking up an Amazon package. During a phone call, she made an appointment to have closeness with someone and mentioned that I and Emily could help her, just like before. It didn't sound like I didn't know what was going on. It sounded like I was actively participating in the deception. I stared at him, not believing his eyes. 2 marriages had ended because John's wife couldn't close her legs and forgot about the camera, so Emily cheated too. Tom hadn't thought about it, but it made sense that she would do the same thing. She covered for John's wife. Actually, he was almost convinced that Emily didn't cheat. He heard them talking before they picked John up, and that convinced him that she wasn't out for a walk. Considering Emily's fidelity, Tom questioned why John wanted a divorce. Maybe it would be easier to forgive her if she had slept with someone else. The situation was even worse for him. The problem was not betrayal, but trust. Not only had she repeatedly lied to him about her actions and John's wife, but she had used their friendship to cover it up in the most evil way possible and make him an active participant in the deception. He wondered how he could stay married to her if he couldn't trust her anymore, and his best friend hated her. He believed that trust could be restored, clarifying that he didn't trust his wife at all. However, he acknowledged that Emily loved him, prompting John to ask if he was sure this was the end. I expressed my belief that trust, cemented by time, was not stronger but weaker. While people may forgive, they never forget. He had no intention of spending the rest of his life hoping that, in years to come, this would be just a faded memory. I asserted that Emily knew what she was doing, and there was nothing she could say to solve the problem. It was time for him to leave and start over. John envied his friend for having an amicable divorce, and they would both remain on good terms. John joked about trying to find a Mexican brothel to get Amanda the right job for her skill set and pay less child support. I laughed, expressing awe at John's ability to see life as it is. It felt like his world was ending, but he knew that in the long run, he would be okay. He went home and talked to Emily, and since she already knew what was going to happen, it would likely be relatively smooth sailing. She cried and begged for counseling, but she understood that he would not be able to come to terms with her behavior. I recognized that it was out of character for her, and she knew it. It was time for him to take a new direction and look at his life with fresh eyes. The chapter in his marriage to Emily was over. Second story. This literally occurred this morning. I'm sharing it here in the hope of venting and gaining some perspective because I've been extremely upset all day and unable to process this rationally. My wife is currently 8 months pregnant with our child, and we live next to another married couple in their late 30s. I've never been a fan of the guy next door. I've always found him to be invasive, and his overly friendly demeanor often seems like he's prying and overly clingy. I'm not sure if my feelings about him are influencing my judgment in this situation, or if this incident simply confirms my suspicions. I left for work as usual, but then decided on the way there that I wasn't in the right mindset, so I called off work. I made a pit stop for breakfast and then headed home to surprise my wife. It took me about 40 minutes in total. When I arrived home, I entered through the back door and was greeted by an unexpected sight. My wife and our neighbor sitting on our living room couch. She was facing him, fully clothed, but with her shirt pulled up to expose her very pregnant stomach. He was facing her, using both hands to rub lotion on her stomach. They both froze in the moment, and my wife asked why I was back so soon. She explained that our neighbor had stopped by to borrow a toolbox while she was applying lotion to her skin, and had asked if he could feel the baby, to which she had agreed. I immediately told him to leave before I physically removed him, and he promptly exited. I tried to maintain my composure and talk to my wife to get the whole story. She claimed that our neighbor's wife is infertile, news to me considering he's never stopped complaining about his personal problems, and he simply wanted to feel the baby. That's her version of events, and she's sticking to it. However, I'm not satisfied with this explanation. In my view, there's a significant difference between allowing someone to feel the baby for a brief moment and inviting them into our home to rub lotion on her stomach. If it had been a close friend of ours, I might have understood, but I've never liked this guy, and my wife has never shown any particular closeness to him beyond polite greetings. She's not the type to let just anyone touch her. It's also rather convenient that he showed up so early, right after I left for work, shortly after his own wife had also gone to work. Furthermore, he's never asked to borrow anything from me before, so it strikes me as odd that he urgently needed a toolbox around 9:30 in the morning. I have doubts about my wife's story. This is the first time my trust in her has wavered. Her explanation just doesn't add up. When I mentioned that I might inform his wife about the incident, she strongly discouraged me, suggesting I shouldn't blow it out of proportion. If it was innocent, why should it be blown out of proportion? Even if there's nothing more to it, I'm not comfortable with what I witnessed. I'm not okay with him touching my unborn child in our home without me present. I understand it's her body and her choice, but I'm not okay with this situation. Feeling the baby kick would be one thing, but he was casually sitting on our sofa, applying lotion to her stomach while they engaged in a private conversation. I'm struggling to find a way to convey my disbelief without causing stress that could be harmful to her or our baby. I don't want to start a fight during this stage of her pregnancy, but my mind is racing and I'm unsettled by what transpired. Any advice would be welcome. Update. I'm providing this single update in response to the overwhelming support and numerous requests to do so. I didn't anticipate such a response, and I've seen references to my situation on other subreddits, so I feel compelled to address it. Many of you were correct. Congratulations. After reading through all your responses, talking to friends, and reflecting for a day, my wife maintained her story, apologized for making me uncomfortable, and assured me it wouldn't happen again. Bob, our neighbor, also left a handwritten note in the mailbox, specifically apologizing. However, I still didn't feel at ease, and the consensus was that I should talk to my neighbor's wife, whom we'll call Sally. So, that's exactly what I did. I waited for my neighbor to leave for work, then called my mother-in-law to take my wife out for lunch and a girls' outing, giving her a chance to get away from the house. I left for work as usual, but then called off again and stayed with a friend. Around noon, I received a text from my wife, informing me that she was with her mother-in-law and would be back by dinner time. When I returned home, I went to Sally's door and knocked. Bob decided to inform Sally that I had kicked him out and made a scene, stating that I didn't want either of them to speak to us anymore because I was angry about his assistance to my wife. To my surprise, I discovered that both Sally and Bob had been visiting my house while I was occupied elsewhere for the past few weeks. My wife had approached Sally and Bob, asking if they could help with chores she couldn't manage alone due to her pregnancy. Sometimes Sally assisted with small tasks, or simply spent time there, sometimes both, and at times just Bob. My wife told Sally that I was aware of it and was fine with their help, which is why she was baffled by her husband's false claims of my anger. Sally showed me the text she sent to my wife. She had her number, not mine, seeking clarification about whether she was still welcome over, but my wife hadn't responded. Since I don't interact with Sally and Bob frequently, she assumed her husband was telling the truth. Sally also confessed that she noticed my wife and Bob becoming close friends, attributing it to the pregnancy, and dismissed it as his way of coping with their infertility. I described what I had witnessed to her, including the tool incident, which turned out to be untrue. We both reached the same conclusions. We both shed tears, shared a hug for the first time, and alternated between denying and accepting the situation while trying to calm each other down. We took a walk around the block together and devised a plan. She intended to call Bob at work and inform him that my wife had messaged her, confessing to an affair between the two of them, to see how he reacted. I returned to my friend's place and began experiencing severe panic attacks, fearing I had made a terrible mistake, ruined my marriage, and worried that I might be wrong. A little later, I received a call from my wife, yelling at me to find a way to leave work and come home, so I hurried home. Bob had called her and told her what Sally had informed him. She accused me of being crazy and a terrible person, even considering leaving me. I was in the midst of a panic attack, thinking I had destroyed my life over nothing, while also trying to calm her down for the sake of our baby. On impulse, I told her that if she was leaving, I would still request a DNA test. That's when everything changed. Her entire demeanor shifted to pleading, begging, apologizing, hyperventilating, and holding me. She asked me how I had found out while denying that anything had happened. I reassured her and asked if she would talk to me if we went for a drive. She agreed. I drove us to a parking lot, and we talked. I told her that if there was any chance of anything happening, she needed to tell me what had transpired because I already knew quite a bit. She confessed that Bob had made advances a few times before she became pregnant. There was uncertainty about the paternity of our baby. Bob had occasionally visited and acted as a dad on rare occasions, just in case it's his. They hadn't been intimate for months. She suggested we could move away, emphasized that the baby was ours no matter what, and claimed that Bob had manipulated her. She admitted lying to Sally to justify Bob's visits for daddy duties. I asked her if she would stay with her mother-in-law for a few days while I calmed down, and she agreed. I took her home, helped her pack, and dropped her off. I've packed up my essential belongings and am staying in a friend's basement. My friend spoke to my wife on my behalf, telling her that if the baby is mine, I'll take responsibility, but if it isn't, it's her concern. In any case, I'll be filing for divorce. My friends took my phone and removed my presence from social media. She has been attempting to reach out to my friends, but they have told her to stay away. I talked to my boss, who has been understanding. The last update I received from Sally was that Bob hadn't returned home and wasn't responding to her calls and texts. I feel like I've lost everything. In less than a week, my life has completely fallen apart. The only thing keeping me going is the slim chance that the baby is mine. I have nothing else. I woke up today feeling disappointed that I woke up at all. I've never felt so isolated, and I haven't come to terms with any of it yet. I'm praying for the first time in my life, hoping to stop feeling this way and find the strength to move forward. Final update. I'm not sure if anyone will recall my initial posts, as they were removed, and I haven't received an explanation despite messaging the mod team. I'm uncertain if this update will be deleted as well. If anyone wishes, they can use removed it to access the posts if they aren't visible on my profile. I continue to receive messages regularly requesting an update, so this will be my final one. In a condensed version of my very lengthy story, a week after my previous update, my soon-to-be ex-wife gave birth to our child, and I was present at the hospital. I am indeed the father. The weeks following my last update were extremely challenging, with drama added by both sides of our families and friends. Fortunately, I've received immense support from the majority of people in my life, as well as from all of you. My wife and I decided to sit down and discuss matters after her discharge, in my friend's basement with my friend nearby in case I needed support. She came over, and we expressed everything we needed to say. I vented and said many hurtful things, some of which I regret. She spent the entire time apologizing and pleading for me to take her back, hoping to give our family a chance to endure everything that transpired. This continued for about an hour, until I realized there was nothing more to be said, and I no longer felt any romantic love for her. She acknowledged that our marriage was over, and we agreed to prioritize our daughter above all else. We planned to work out a custody arrangement amicably and eventually become more active co-parents once our wounds heal. She has the potential to be a great mother, but she failed as a wife. My sole focus now is to get myself in the right mental state to be the best father possible. We also intend to sell our home eventually, but for now, I'm staying in an apartment. Sally is ending her relationship with Bob. He's currently residing with his mother and continues to avoid direct communication with Sally. She mentioned that the last message she received from him conveyed his understanding of his actions, an apology for hurting her, an expression of love, and a willingness to accept a divorce without contesting it. Sally is finding it challenging to cope with everything and lacks a support system. As a result, we are forming a friendship, primarily two individuals who have been hurt leaning on each other for support. She also intends to begin therapy. Just to clarify, I have no intentions of having anything beyond a platonic friendship with Sally. She's a wonderful person, but that's the extent of it. I still haven't fully come to terms with my new role as a parent. Mentally, I had already prepared myself for the possibility that the child might not be mine. I plan to attend parenting classes and spend more time bonding with my daughter during her early years. It's a daunting prospect, but I am genuinely happy. I understand there's a lot of work ahead and more emotional healing to do, but I am in a stable place and I am a father. That's what matters most. Third story. My wife and I have been married for 6 years. We met soon after our previous marriages ended and quickly fell in love. It's been fantastic. We have our disagreements like any couple, but we've had a wonderful life together, and for the first time, I felt genuinely loved. Then, 3 weeks ago, I discovered she cheated on me. Some context. I've been dealing with anxiety and depression. In the last 6 months, I noticed something wasn't right, and at my wife's urging, I sought help from a new doctor to explore different medications. Her daughter also deals with anxiety and depression, so my wife manages a lot. I understand it's tough, but she mentioned that it had become increasingly challenging for her to cope with my depression in recent months. I didn't feel like going out or doing much, and I probably wasn't the most enjoyable person to be around. I admit I didn't put in as much effort as I should have to improve my mental health until it seemed too late. My wife has a group of friends she attends rock concerts with, which isn't my scene, so I'm fine with her going without me. It's her time with friends, and I get some time to myself. I prefer being at home. But one of the guys in her group is the person she cheated on me with. She claimed they had been good friends for 3 years, and only in the month before she cheated did she start flirting with him. She chose to spend a weekend alone by the lake to clear her head, claiming it was tough living in a home with constantly negative vibes. That weekend away was when she cheated. I should have seen it coming. She dislikes being alone, so her idea of a solitary weekend should have been a warning sign. When I found out, my mind was made up. We need a divorce. Collect your things and leave. I want no part of you. For the first couple of days, I was hurt, angry, and resolute about starting afresh. My wife pleaded for me to come back. She said marriages can withstand this. She doesn't understand why she did it, and she wants to reconcile. I wasn't convinced. But as the initial shock faded, I reflected on how these 6 years have been the best. This was unlike her. She was the last person I'd imagined would cheat on me. Until recently, she was an incredibly loving and caring wife. So I reached out, about 5 days after discovering the truth. She came over, and I expressed my wish to work things out. I wanted her to return home to see if we could salvage our relationship. But she said she didn't want to. She explains there's something clearly wrong for her to act this way, something wrong with the marriage and something off in her mind. She mentioned lining up an apartment and planning to move out, uncertain if we can salvage things. So, I ask her if it's because she's still in touch with the friend she had an affair with. She clarified she's not leaving me for him, but she does have feelings for him, making it impossible for her to focus on us as long as those emotions linger. That's where I stand, heartbroken, feeling hit twice. I learned from a mutual friend yesterday that the friend she's been talking to has stopped flirting, reduced communication, and she's disappointed. It seems like a midlife crisis, seeking attention and serotonin while we're apart. I'm approaching 7 weeks since the D-Day, and the pain persists. With the guidance of a friend, I realized I'm codependent on my wife. My happiness relied entirely on her. She was my whole world. When she left, I felt like I had lost everything. Every day, I'm striving to make myself stronger. Acknowledging my codependency issues, I'm actively working on becoming more self-reliant. Currently, I wouldn't be good for anyone, as I'd likely cling to a new partner, setting myself up for more pain. For those aiming to reconcile, it's essential to introspect deeply first. Understand why you truly desire reconciliation. Great memories and a happy marriage are valid reasons to attempt overcoming betrayal, but ensure it's not solely because your spouse was your entire emotional support. We all need to stand independently emotionally. That's my lesson. I'm unsure how my story will conclude. I'm not even entirely certain I still want to reconcile. I've initiated no contact with my wife to focus on what's most important. Me. Update. Approaching 11 weeks post. D-Day. I'm about to sit down with my wife and compel her to decide. I don't desire divorce, but she's left me with no alternative. I can't continue living like this. From the start, I sensed she wanted to explore dating and freedom while keeping me as a backup plan. After a conversation where she shared details about her dating life, it became apparent. She deliberately hurt me, making it clear she was pushing me away. The following morning, I realized it's over. I can't have our marriage hanging in uncertainty while she seeks a replacement. To me, this isn't about working things out. She mentioned missing what we had while dating, but I strongly disagree. I can't tolerate this any longer. I wish to end it outright, but my therapist suggests confronting her with a choice. I'll ask her to halt communication with other men and try to mend our marriage, or she's choosing divorce. This approach prevents her from playing the victim, as she has a say in this. I don't want a divorce, but I refuse to live in this manner. She's shown no interest in reconciling over the past few weeks. Instead, she's sought my help for things she could have asked the guy she's dating. I'm furious and deeply hurt. I'd say there's less than a 1% chance she wants to reconcile. I expect a struggle where she avoids mentioning divorce to sidestep being seen as the villain. She'll likely argue that I haven't given her enough time and that I'm pushing too hard for us to reconcile. Nearly 3 months is ample time to decide whether to stay in a marriage. This turmoil began after my wife spent a weekend with another guy. Despite my willingness to reconcile, she chose to live independently. Despite enduring 2 major blows, I hoped for a positive resolution. Not all stories have a happy ending, it seems. I hope the excitement of dating again is worth sacrificing our marriage. Update. After 11 weeks of coping with my WS's indecision, I finally gave her an ultimatum between the guys she was dating during her newfound freedom or our marriage. She chose the guys. Days later, she claims to have second thoughts. After a week of on and off discussions about reconciliation, I grew tired of the back and forth, and once again, asked her to choose between me and the dating life. For the second time in 11 days, she opted for her freedom. I'm fully aware I was foolish to believe she'd genuinely want to fix things. I let my codependency influence me for 3 months, but it's truly over now. I'm restarting the divorce process and removing her from my life. The hardest part for me right now is grappling with the harsh reality of a failed marriage and being rejected by the woman I love, twice. How did you manage to get past the thought of your WS with someone else? She considers this guy her boyfriend, and he'll be at her family Thanksgiving. It's the same family that used to spend Christmas Eve at our home. Now they'll be with him. I'm absolutely certain I'm making the right choice. There's no doubt. But the pain of being betrayed and her essentially choosing this guy over me, it's excruciating. I don't know how to get through this. Yesterday marked the final hearing for our divorce, precisely 5 months from when I discovered her infidelity. As we left the lawyer's office, she hugged me and wished me happiness. I echo that sentiment. We parted ways for the last time, both with tears in our eyes. She was the one person I was certain I'd spend my life with. That didn't happen. So, while this is a new beginning, an opportunity to find someone who will treat me and my daughter as we deserve, it's a somber time. The pain of her actions won't fade quickly. Rebuilding trust will be the most challenging. She took more from me than she realizes. Cheating is the cruelest way to convey not loving someone anymore.